Alright, Polycam City is a project that I had in mind since actually many months, but I had the occasion to start it all of a sudden lately because I quickly needed some environments background for one of my recent projects, basically, which is the Endless Engine video that I made for the contest. Well, I thought, why I don't create some assets that are gonna be very useful for filling environments or backgrounds when I need some cities, and all of these assets can be useful forever in future if I optimize them in order to be quite reasonable in terms of amount of polygons. You can see, for example, this bridge support is very low poly, by the way, at the same time preserving the quality of the textures, even if they are very low poly. You can see, for example, this one, 84 vertices, but to me it looks cool. There is a bevel modifier that is kind of breaking the hard corners that can happen in this object. You can see the bevel modifier here. If I turn it off, so before, after, there are some tricks in order to make these objects to look cool even if they are very low poly. So there is to say that there are many city assets already ready on the web available for download. Some of them are paid, some of them are free, but the thing is that they are never what I really look for. Sometimes they are too much high poly, sometimes they are too much low poly, sometimes they are just looking like CGI video game assets that don't look good, don't have this type of light reflection and stuff, or maybe they just look like cubes with some texture slapped there just to say that this is an object. So I want to have my right compromise to have low poly objects that still look good, and this was possible only by making all these objects by myself. So I did it, and in future I will go on updating this file basically forever, because I will add everything that a city can offer, like trash containers, poles, fences, different type of roads, also electrical stuff, you know, all the stuff that you may want to have for quickly make an environment in a city. This pole is not a 3D scan, is actually modeled, but I inserted this pole in this asset because whenever you are building a city, you of course need also some street lamps. My idea is to have the majority of these objects that are 3D scans, but also some of them that are just here to complete this asset pack, like for example also the city backgrounds that are very, very useful, giving the impression that there is a city behind these walls. Also the same goes for this trellis, because look at this, the basic geometry of this object is very simple. I just gave to this object a mirror modifier that is duplicating and flipping the half of this object, and then the wireframe modifier that is basically creating all this, the triangulate, adding additional details, and then the array modifier to loop this object forever and ever. And the more you increase the array modifier, and the more you get trellis as much as you want. And then there are also these cables included. The cables, I didn't want to have high resolution curves that are charging your render times and your systems, so I basically built just some flat planes with some textures of cables drawn in Photoshop with the alpha channel. Basically you just increase the array modifier count, and this should work together pretty well with the trellis. Let's try to duplicate this trellis, and there we go, they are looping forever and ever. Look at this crosswalk, this is very interesting. So the first thing to say is that I really like how the light is responding on this crosswalk. It's like that is a little bit wet. Well, let's have some fun. There is enough geometry in this crosswalk appositely to let some curves. So I'm gonna add an array modifier. Well, I'm gonna change the direction of the array. I'm gonna make it on the y-axis, increase the count a little bit. Well, and after that we can add a curve in order to make some variation in the direction of this crosswalk. So Shift A, adding a curve. Bezier, I have this curve, I'm gonna rotate it a little bit, more or less in the center, edit the shape and put this here, extrude it with E. Let's stay in solid view so I can see this curve, and X-ray vision, activate it, and there we go, I can see finally my curve. Well, now if you select your crosswalk model, and in the modifiers I'm gonna give a curve modifier. As a curve I'm gonna choose of course my curve, there we go. Should follow the curve properly. And okay, when you meet problems like this that is not really following the curve, even if I extrude the points, so select the crosswalk, and in the array modifier, let's put a negative value, -1. And finally, when I go editing my curve, it's just following and keep repeating the shape of the crosswalk. We can also increase the count of the array modifier many times. So after that, let's see what else we can have. So I not only had a bunch of scans that surprisingly they were working fine. Of course, they needed a little bit of tweakings and adjustments, especially because I wanted to make some of these assets loopable with the array modifier. But also I adjusted the materials in order to be more realistic when it comes to light response. You can see these reflections happening in the cement or stuff like that, which to me looks better than when it comes by default with any 3D scans. In future, actually more in detail this month, I will also post a tutorial about how I make 3D scans using Polycams, because a lot of people is asking that to me. Yeah, probably it's gonna be interesting and it's gonna come very soon. Just give time to time, because it's kind of hard to make tutorials regularly. Let's see other things. So let's see, I want to start having some fun building some city. Maybe we can use the same curve that we have here to loop some walls. Just put it down a little bit until it intersects, and I'm gonna give, let's see the geometry that we have. Yeah, it's enough geometry. So I'm gonna give array modifier many times, and not in the x direction but in the y direction, probably negative -1. No, it's the 1. Okay, and also I'm gonna give a curve modifier after the array. The curve is gonna be this one, and of course is the opposite of what I want, and so I'm gonna invert the direction of the array, -1. And finally it stays in place, and as soon as I increase or decrease the count, it's following the curve. Look at that. We are starting to build very quickly some cities. Eventually you want to consider also to use the merge function in the array modifier. If I activate merge, it will try to connect these parts when it comes to array. Probably we can increase the distance of merging. There we go, and now it's connected. So after that we can put something else. The bridge is composed of 3 different parts. The bottom part of the highway that is supposed to be on the bridge, I want it to be separate because this way you can array as much as you want. Then there is the corner. That is another different separated object, because corners, I don't know if you need the corner sometimes or somewhere, so I just put it on a separate asset that you can simply connect, put it more or less close to this asset here until they kind of look connected. And then this support for the bridges are 3 different, so that you can have a lot of them without having the repetitive pattern problem. Now let's see, I'm gonna put some roads below this bridge, and it's gonna be this road here. I'm gonna take this one, and also this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. Maybe the street lamps too. I'm gonna put all of this down here. There we go. And probably this is too big, and so I'm gonna scale all of them. But instead of doing this randomly, I'm gonna put the 3D cursor something around here in the road. And if you change the transform viewpoint to 3D cursor, you can scale them accordingly to where the 3D cursor is. There we go. I'm gonna try to scale them until they stay below the bridge, and now they fit properly. There we go, and we can finally array this street lamp and see what we get. Oh, I really love the reflection on these roads. This is one of my favorite parts about the road, is this type of roughness with noise texture that is breaking up a little bit the too much regular texture. So we want to, what is this? Let's put it outside from here. I'm gonna put this, I don't know how to call it, here. I really love this reflection that is coming from the window that is back here. Look at this. The transmission on this window is making a great job. Look at how dirty are the windows here. This is how reality is. A completely dirty and messy world. Nothing is regular, nothing is straight, nothing is completely clean. So if you want realism, always search for dirtiness and irregular surfaces and never have repetitive patterns. So this is kind of protecting the cars from collisions. When the array modifier doesn't go straight as you expect, you can see that the more I increase it, and the more it's going somehow below the ground, probably means, if you press N, probably means that I didn't apply the rotation to this object. In fact, the default rotation is completely messed up. It's not really 0. So what you can do is to, with this object selected, I'm going to press Ctrl A and apply rotation. And this should put all the rotation values to the default value of 000 and the W on 1. So what does it mean? It means that we have to adjust the array modifier. This is going to be on 0, probably this is going to be on 1, and now finally it goes straight. We can close this gap between each of them by decreasing this value and duplicating this array modifier this time. Maybe just 2 and put it negative. Let's see. And finally, we have a decent side of the highway. Back in the distance, you want to have some cities. There we go. This bridge, I really love this asset. Some corners, of course, are kind of weird. For example, here, this is not really good because when you make a 3D scans, you don't have access to all the sides of what you are scanning most of the time. So what you can do is to just hide these parts with some other assets like this. This like a triangular type of shapes, they are supposed to be originally some bridge support structures. So what you're gonna do is to use them to support the bridge. So I'm gonna put this, for example, here, not only to support the bridge, but also to hide the end part of this 3D scan that doesn't really make sense. You can perfectly take this one and Alt-D to duplicate it. You know, you have to rearrange your environment until it works fine. This is pretty cool. Also lovely to see. All these walls that can be, I believe that the majority of them can be looped with the array modifier, but you have to care about how they are looping in the middle. Other things, let's see here, this is not particularly good because I just made it like very quickly just to see like if it's gonna work because I saw some cool graffitis. By the way, it can be useful for putting additional stuff in the background. By the way, this big graffiti here, very low poly, I don't know if it was so cool and I had to grab it and put it in Blender. So yeah, this is an overall look of the potential that you have with this asset, and more to come in the future, more to come. I have a lot of things that I want to add so that I finally can stop going crazy on the web and searching for stuff that is never exactly what I need, and instead I have my own assets that are low poly. If you're going to make some close-ups, you have to build your own objects, of course, or you have to search for high poly objects. This is not the purpose of these assets, by the way. So it's gonna come soon the tutorial for how I use Polycam and how I prepare objects properly to be cool. Thanks for watching and see you next time.